I use the word hipster in my book and use it just in conversation sort of reluctantly because it sounds like an insult, and I don't mean it as an insult. And I'm also, when I, talking about hipsters, I'm not talking about, some extreme group of ultra trendy people holed up somewhere in Williamsburg or Red Hook, or, I'm not talking about some really small or elite group of people. To me, I use the word to describe this kind of national or even international consensus that exists among city dwellers of a certain age and of a certain kind of cultural disposition. People who listen to indie rock and people who dress in sort of somewhat similar ways. And to me, as you say, what's remarkable is how steady that kind of cultural cohort has been in their tastes and in the kind of uniformity of their tastes, and also just how undifferentiated it is from place to place to place. I mean, you sort of talk about going to Williamsburg after 4 years and feeling like everything's the same. Well, what I find remarkable is that, you go and see people in San Francisco, or you see them in Chicago, or you see them in Boston, all around the country. If you go and see your friends who are part of the same rough demographic, you'll find that that they're all listening to the same bands and they're reading similar books. They're interested in the same kind of culture. And to me, this is just one of the products of the internet. It's the fact that that the internet has allowed people to find culture instantaneously and simultaneously. The fact that the internet has also allowed, geography not to become too much of a factor in terms of what music you're listening to or what newspaper you're reading. I mean, people in San Francisco are as apt to read the New York Times online as people in New York are, and so you find that people are able to access the same sort of stuff, and so on. So to me, when I talk about hipster culture, to me it's this kind of fascinating national urban middle brow. And that it has remained remarkably stable in terms of how people dress and what people are into, and that it is, it's the way to be a kind of upwardly mobile urban sort of 20 and 30 something in America today. I've heard other people use the expression indie yuppie instead of hipster, and that maybe is a more apt expression in that it gets at the kind of uniformity of this culture across the country. To me, what's replaced differentiators based on where you are, or differentiators based on different sort of camps or schools, I think that, kind of young sort of intellectual culture or young sort of cultural fans used to break down in terms of, in terms of camps, or in terms of there would be geographical divisions. To me, today, what's replaced all that is speed. That there's more churn. There's more of a sense. Part of the reason why there can be this uniformity and there can be this kind of sense of stasis that can last over essentially a whole decade is that there are constantly new cultural products that are being thrown at people, again because of the internet. And this is one of the main theses of my book is that what the internet kind of culture does to us is it throws this barrage of novelty, whether it's new bands or it's new books or it's some new political argument or some new tiny little celebrity, that we're constantly being subject to these waves and waves of these new stories, and that because of that, we feel like we are living in this very dynamic way. We feel like we're living in this very dynamic time, and yet so much of what's being thrown at us is forgettable. It's disposable. A lot of it is stuff that we look back on, even just a few weeks after we find out about it, and we sort of think, oh, that's not really very interesting anymore. But of course, we don't look back on it because we're on to the next thing. And so, that to me is the kind of paradox and the problem of culture making today as a whole is that the speed and the churn of the internet culture, or the sort of culture that the internet enables, allows us to feel like that there's something going on when in fact a lot of times there's not that much interesting going on at all.